Trade uncertainty is certainly one of the things weighing on the markets today. To former Mississippi Republican Governor Haley Barbour, who I got to tell you, I was a huge admirer of what you had to say about George Herbert Walker Bush yesterday and the day before. Just terrific testament to his greatness that you enunciated so clearly. One of the things that he, of course, was very interested in was trade. And even though he wasn't the absolute brainchild of NAFTA, that really came from Reagan himself. Still, George Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, had so much background in trade, particularly with Mexico when he was in the oil business with Zapata Oil and his friends down in Mexico. So he really boosted the idea of trade in the Western Hemisphere. Do you think that even George H. Walker Bush would have realized that over time it needed to be changed somewhat from its origins?
Oh, I would think so. As you say, it's coming out of the Reagan White House where I was political director. I'm a free trader, and President Reagan was promoting NAFTA when I was there. President Bush promoted NAFTA and really pretty well got the deal put together. And then President Clinton actually introduced it to Congress. And I'll never forget, I was chairman of the Republican National Committee, the opposition party, and I came out in favor of NAFTA. And people said, why are you doing that, Democrat president? I said, well, look, I supported it when Ronald Reagan was for it. I supported it when George Bush was for it. I'm for it. And I think most people realize it has been a good thing for the United States. But there are no treaties or agreements that are this complicated that don't need to be looked at every few years. That was 25 years ago.
Yeah, it was longer ago than people realize. And of course, things have changed worldwide, too. We had a much more of an optimistic feeling about trade. We had thought that free trade with China was going to turn it into a democracy. Instead, we've had more trade with China, and it's become more authoritarian. So things don't always turn out the way you think they will.
Or in the case of China particularly, they start off in one direction and then something happens that turns it back. You know, in China, Deng Xiaoping really did move toward not only economic freedom, but a lot more political freedom, Jiang Zemin. But this president of China is very much for the Communist Party ruling and making the decisions. And we've all seen since they became part of WTO, the Chinese cheat. I mean, that's the real issue here.
They cheat and they steal our intellectual property. And as we saw with Huawei, we're not going to take it anymore. I mean, we are in the arrest of this woman who is the daughter of the founder of the company. She's the heir apparent to the company. It looks like we're really playing hardball. What do you think, looking at our side of things, what do you think of the way in which this administration is playing hardball with China now on trade?
Well, look, it would have been a lot easier if we had, from the beginning, right after they became part of the WTO, if we'd have called their hand then on taking intellectual property and unlevel playing field in every sort of way. But we didn't for really 2 administrations, 16 years. So the Trump administration is kind of having to start this when experts are telling us in 2025, just 7 years from now, China's economy is going to be as big as ours. So I think he's had the right kind of political courage to realize we have to do something about it. If we're going to do something about it, it's got to be now. We can't continue to wait. But it's certainly harder after they have become accustomed to being allowed to cheat and not go by the same rules as everybody else. So this is going to be hard. There is risk. There's no doubt about that. But if not now, when?
Well, you've got a good gut for what happens, politically speaking. Do you think that eventually we knock out a deal with them?
Yes, because eventually it's in both countries' best interests, and both countries are better off politically, economically, in security, if we have good economic relationships. And the only way you can have good economic relationship with anybody, including the Chinese, is they got to keep their word.
I got to ask about 2020, because the best instincts you have are on things political. There's a billionaire running for president in 2020, and I'm not talking about Donald Trump. It looks like Michael Bloomberg is about to throw his hat in the ring. What do you think of a Bloomberg run for the presidency?
Well, first of all, does he run as an independent or does he run as a Democrat? I think had he run as an independent in 2016, he would have probably gotten a whole lot of votes, because there are a lot of voters and very loud about it who didn't want Trump or Clinton. And I think if you remember, David, in the exit polling, about 20% of people who actually had gone and voted said they really didn't like either one of them.
That's right.
And Trump won those by a very large margin. Would those people have voted for Michael Bloomberg? I don't know, but I think 2020 is going to be quite different. It's going to be, instead of the Republicans having this huge field, it's going to be the Democrats having this huge field. And instead of Republicans trying to be moderately conservatives like in 16, these Democrats are going to be hard left. The Democratic Party has had a huge lurch to the left, and that will be very evident from their nomination contest.
It does appear they're still going in that direction, Mike Bloomberg notwithstanding. The former RNC chairman for the United States knows well about all these matters political, and it's always a pleasure to see you. Haley Barbour, thank you very much, Governor.
Thank you, David.